I wanted to find out the issue of minimum wage. Was it one of those discussed at the national conference?
Oh, it was well debated. All the arguments for and against, were brought to the table. But by and large, the consensus of all members, made up of traditional rulers, professionals, employers, the captains of industry, including labor, is that labor issues, inclusive of minimum wage. Don't forget, labor issues is not just minimum wage. We're talking of hours of work, laws dealing with dispute resolution in the workplace, maternity, all those, including pensions, all those issues, we all agree should be on the exclusive list. Just like issue dealing with capital, whether finance, investment, should all be on exclusively, because labor is not just a cost, in production. We're also factor of production. So if you want to motivate Nigerian workers, regardless of where they are located, whether federal, state, private, public sector, you must give them certain minimum standard. Chamberlain, your channel has done a very good job to expose the way workers are being maltreated, in the workplaces. Recently you had a report in a factory Linda company where a worker slumped and died. It's because those employers are not respecting minimum standard that should be put in place in those companies. We must have certain minimum laws to protect, to give safety to workers at work, to guarantee that when you work beyond certain hours, you should be paid overtime. You're entitled to leave allowances. You're also entitled to minimum pay. And let me tell you, minimum pay is not the same thing as the living wage. You can pay above that through the process of collective bargaining. Is that the minimum means that you must give certain minimum floor for a working man and woman to be able to say, I'm working, and I should be able to survive before the end of the month. And that 18,000 is a lot of compromise from what we demanded for. And 18,000 today is still a problem. And as I'm talking to you now, some unscrupulous employers still want to pay less than that. In fact, some graduates who have been paid about 12,000 until unions come in to fight over this issue. So I think the point I'm raising here is that at the national conference, there was a consensus in all the committee on social issues, committee on economy, committee on labor, youth and sport, of which yours comrade was a deputy chair, and the committee on even devolution of powers, because that's where we had the controversy. By the time Labour canvassed the position, all the members agree that labor issues are too important to be stepped down and be made concurrent, because the danger of pushing to concurrent is that you are going to have multiple labor standards and there will be multiple troubles. In fact, you are going to engender more serious competition that cannot be controlled, because no state workers want to earn less than the other state workers. So you are going to have more disruptions. So it's better, even in terms of managing labor issues, to have certain minimum standard that will be centrally agreed upon, which all of us can be able to manage. But unfortunately, the knowledge gap we discovered at the National Assembly the National Conference, was that they thought this was being fixed by Abuja arbitrarily by federal government. But by the time we explained that this passed through the process of collective bargaining, representative of employers association were there, private sector employers were there, a good number of federal government people and other delegates now saw the need that, if it was through process of collective bargaining, next time we are reviewing minimum wage, let us stakeholders be on duty to make sure that we do proper bargaining and there's sense of ownership for the outcome of that minimum wage negotiation. But let me tell you that labor issues cannot be treated with levity. If we have minimum standard for our legislators, we are not paying legislators based on constituency. If it is based on constituency, a good number of those senators cannot be handling those prohibitive pay they are paying. But there is a minimum standard for them so that they can be comfortable to perform their legislative work. What is good for senators is even far more desirable for Nigerian working men and women.
I would also argue, doesn't this negate the whole principle of true federalism if you want it to be on the exclusive list?
No, Suleiman, federalism must be rooted on certain minimum standards and core values. Yes, federalism is not a footloose thing. There must be certain minimum things that must unite all of us. Minimum flag, minimum national anthem, minimum standard for all of us to exist. You don't, so you can, under federalism, you can pay more. We are not saying you can pay more. In fact, as I'm talking to you now, the minimum wage that we did in 2000. In fact, federal has certain adjustment that is higher than what was the national minimum. But there must be national minimum, because federal workers face certain challenges. Some states, in fact, in 2000, some states even had a rate higher than the national minimum. So the point we are raising is that let there be that minimum floor for all of us. Just like we have minimum police, we have a minimum army. So also people can pay more if they want to have extra pay. So federalism does not mean that there should be minimum standard. There must be. What we are saying is that Nigeria also signatory to ILO conventions that says that you must not work more than 8 hours for you to survive. If you work more than 8 hours, that shall be paid overtime. There must be a minimum standard. However, you can work more if you want to, but there must be special incentive to attach to it. So federalism is not.
Before we wrap up on this, give us your perspective on yes, standard. The country successfully managed Ebola, but you touched on that very briefly, and what was that it? Yes, we've been designated Ebola free. But how did the workers come in on this one? Because I didn't quite get the full point you were trying to make on that.
Oh, no, Chamberlain, we're also part of this success. Yeah, I lost touch with your comment, but what I wanted to say is that we are quite excited about the Nigerian success story with the fight against Ebola, precisely because we're also part of this struggle. And I've already told you that, in fact, the first victims of Ebola were working people. The late Dr. Daredevil, those nurses, who were victims, medical personnel who died, they were working people, so their labor. In fact, what Ebola's victory has shown is that, the motto of Nigerian Labour Congress is labor creates wealth, and we can now see that labor also guarantees health, because the success story was recorded on the back of the sacrifices of the medical personnel, and including workers at hospital, the airport workers who have to do the screening with all the risk, for those people who are coming seaport, and those who have to treat the patients, the isolation centers, all the contact tracing that we have done. They were all done by the working people. So we are happy about this success.
Well done to the
and the second point I want to raise is that labor was also motivated to achieve this success. But what we've done for Ebola, we should also do it for malaria.
I
we should do it for measles.
Should be listening to this, and then they will take it from there.
Ebola doesn't have a cure, but others have a cure. We can achieve success on that.
We'll continue this discussion at a later day. Thank you very much indeed for speaking with us today.
And that's why labor has to be given minimum standard to do more.
The Vice President of Nigerian Labour Congress was also delegate at the just concluded national conference. We'll be back in just a moment. Don't go away.